Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, the scab has been ripped off and the pus is now spewing forward in the National Party. All of that naked ambition, those divisions that they have been covering up for so long are now spewing forth into the public arena. The digs at each other, the snide remarks, the plotting in Copperfields, the asides during select committee meetings, it's all started. It's all started, and all we know is, I tell you what, Mr Speaker, I've read this book before, and I can tell the members opposite it all gets worse from here, and I can tell them with some certainty that their troubles are just beginning, because it's all going to get worse from here, and whoever the next temporary leader of the National Party is, the plotting will continue, because all of those ambitions that have been uncovered in the last 48 hours aren't simply going to go away. They all think they can do the top job better than the person sitting next to them, and they are all out to get each other. It is absolutely clear. And of course we've got the retirement bench over here who clearly are no longer interested. They're checking out of the building. Heki Parata's thinking about staying. She's probably going to throw her hat in the ring. She'd be the only person left on the front bench who hasn't. So of course we know that the National Party is absolutely ripped open, and we saw that in question time today when Jonathan Coleman had a dig at Bill English about staying past his use-by date. It's already started. Jonathan Coleman talking about Bill English staying past his use-by date. Jonathan Coleman thinks, of course, he's the young, refreshed face of the National Party. Then, of course, we've got Judith Crusher Collins. Judith Crusher Collins, whose career has just been an absolute glowing success, who wants to lead the National Party into the next election. I say to Judith Collins, she's got my backing. There's no one else I'd rather that we were running against at the next election than Judith Collins. But of course we know that the National Party at the end of the day, they're going to chicken out and they're going to settle for Bill English, the caretaker Prime Minister, the guy who they will let have the job if he can hold their numbers up enough. If he can hold their numbers up enough to lead them into the next election. And of course, if the numbers start going down, we could see this happening again before the next election. This may not be the end of the matter for the National Party as their numbers go into freefall, because of course, Mr 21% is about to take over as the leader of the National Party. And I've read that book before as well, Mr Speaker, and that didn't end very well for the National Party either. And they're not going to like that one. They're not going to like that one iota. But you can already see the plotting and the scheming. The more green leather we see over there, the more we know that they're hurried away, they're in their little groups, they're plotting their numbers, they've got their spreadsheets out, and they're desperately trying to figure out how they can advance their own interests at the expense of the interests of New Zealanders, because fundamentally that's what this is about. At a time when we have people who are homeless, when our educational rankings are plummeting in the OECD, the National Party are focused on themselves and not the challenges that face New Zealand. They are in the government. They do not have that luxury, and yet that is the luxury that they are taking. So this week, it is all about the National Party talking to each other and not communicating to New Zealanders, and not talking about the hopes and aspirations of New Zealanders, and instead they're busy fighting each other. So let's look at some of the things that we have seen in the last 24 hours. I was taken by this photo of John Key hanging out in the corridor, desperate to avoid being seen with Judith Collins, because Judith Collins was already in front of the media when John Key came to walk down to the House today. So desperate was John Key not to be seen with Judith Collins that he hung back in the corridor all by his lonesome. How things have changed. And then of course we've got the anonymous leaks from the National Party caucus. This is how it starts, Mr Speaker. The anonymous leaks from the National Party caucus. That there is a huge mood for change on the backbench. I think that's Todd Barclay, because Bill English didn't back Todd Barclay down there in Clutha Southland, and Todd Barclay's getting his own back. He's getting his own back, and he wants a mood for change. Another National Party backbencher, another anonymous comment to the media, Bill English shouldn't just be anointed. That was the other comment from a National Party backbencher. Of course, they're not willing to put their names on record yet, Mr Speaker, but the plotting and the scheming will continue, and the National Party's troubles are all ahead of them. And in the meantime, they are not focused on the hopes and aspirations of New Zealanders. They are focused on their own ambitions, their own internal squabbling, and they are not they are not acting in the interests of the country, and that's why there will be a change of government next year.